And Stephen Miles is the man in Queensland, or he's about to be. This is after a late night deal between the unions. It was all stitched up last night. Joining me live is senior reporter from the Courier Mail, Hayden Johnson, who broke this story this morning. Hayden, thanks so much. So what happened last night?
So, Laura, good morning. We know that there was late night negotiations between the left and the right of the Labor Party in Queensland. Shannon Fentiman had mounted a fairly valiant challenge against Stephen Miles, but in the end, it wasn't enough. We know that union power brokers last night agreed to install Stephen Miles as Queensland's 40th Premier with the support of the right faction and Treasurer, now Deputy Premier, Cameron Dick.
So why are the unions so strongly behind Stephen Miles?
So we know the power broker is United Workers union boss Gary Bullock. So he's been sort of the puppeteer, I suppose the critics would say, of the state government since 2015. Way back then, he knew that Campbell Newman, the former LNP Premier, was on the nose, and he bankrolled several candidates. They got up in the 2015 landslide with Anastasia Palaszczuk, and he's had unrivaled control of the Labor Party ever since. He's always been a big supporter of Stephen Miles. We understand they talk daily, and when Anastasia Palaszczuk was told by Mr Bullock last week that her time was up, he did everything he could, and then last night negotiated to have his chosen successor, Stephen Miles, take the top job.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see because obviously the union bosses know a little bit more about Stephen Miles's plans than we do. I mean, Hayden, do we know why he even wants to be leader? You know, does he have these big reform ideas? Or, you know, do the unions and Stephen Miles just see this as, you know, his turn?
That's right. It's going to be quite interesting. So we know that he has been, since 2020 when he became Deputy Premier, the natural successor to Anastasia Palaszczuk. What we don't know now is the deal that was struck between the left and the right last night. We understand the right will get more cabinet positions. The deadwood in the Queensland Labor cabinet will be removed. But that's something the backers of Miss Fentiman this morning are keenly keeping an eye on. What deal was struck between Stephen Miles and the right leader, Cameron Dick, going forward? It's something that we're expecting to play out over the next couple of days.
I'd be fascinated to see, Hayden, how we see Stephen Miles distance himself from Anastasia Palaszczuk because, you know, yes, she turned the state around in terms of for the Labor Party there. They had 7 seats. Then she's been in power for 9 years. But you can't get away from the fact that in the last couple of months, Queenslanders aren't that happy with her. All the polls show it. So Stephen Miles really does need to show that he's different to her, but he's been an integral part of her leadership as well. So what does he do there, do you think?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why we saw yesterday Shannon Fentiman position herself as the renewal candidate. She distanced herself from Anastasia Palaszczuk. She said the government needs to do better around youth crime and transparency in the Olympic Games. So,
sorry, as you were.
We are expecting some fairly significant reforms. We know that he's committing to an independent review of Olympic Games infrastructure, the $2.7 billion Gabba redevelopment, the development of the RNA Stadium, which really sort of, I suppose, contributed to Miss Palaszczuk's final downfall. We know they'll be reviewed, but he faces a Herculean task in turning Labor's primary vote around if they're to have any chance of defeating David Crisafulli in October.
Yeah, and David Crisafulli, certainly, this is his preferred candidate, isn't it?
He won't say publicly, but I've spoken to several opposition MPs who were basically licking their lips this week at Labor's leadership drama. They did want Stephen Miles to become Queensland's 40th Premier because they believe that voters know him. He played that attack dog role during the COVID-19 pandemic, some would argue unconvincingly. Now he's tried to shed that kind of giggles image that he's been labelled with and become more statesmanlike. But in the eyes of David Crisafulli and the LNP, I think they believe that Queenslanders have already made up their mind on Stephen Miles.
Hayden, excellent work. Thanks so much for taking a time out of your very busy morning to join us on AM Agenda. And we just had a little tiny bit of background music for you there. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you soon.